Welcome to Read a Book a Day, the channel where we break down the world's best books so you can learn faster and smarter. In today's video, we're diving into Great by Choice by Jim Collins and Morton T. Hansen. Have you ever wondered why some companies thrive in chaos while others collapse? What makes certain leaders succeed when everything around them is unpredictable? Well, this book has the answers. We're going to uncover the powerful principles that 10x companies use to not just survive, but dominate in unstable environments. From productive paranoia to the 20-mile march and how to turn luck into long-term success, Great by Choice teaches us how to take control of our future, no matter what the world throws our way. So if you're ready to learn how to thrive in uncertainty, stick around and don't forget to subscribe to Read a Book a Day for more life-changing book summaries. Let's jump in. Chapter 1 of Thriving in Uncertainty. We simply do not know what the future holds. That's the opening message of this chapter, and it's spot on. The future is unpredictable, and the last 15 years are proof of that. Think back, there were major events that shook the world. September 11, 2001, for instance, completely transformed global security and trust. Economies crashed, government surpluses turned into deficits, and the tech revolution was in full force. It felt like nothing was stable anymore. But here's the key takeaway. While we cannot predict the future, we can create it. Now, in the middle of all this uncertainty, some companies didn't just survive, they thrived. They thrived not because they could control chaos, but because they learned to navigate it. They built businesses that were so resilient that, no matter what the world threw at them, they came out on top. So what's their secret? That's what this book sets out to discover. Why do some companies thrive in chaos while others fall apart? The authors take us back to 2002, when they kicked off a 9-year research project to answer this very question. They focused on companies that weren't giants from the start. These companies began from a vulnerable position and rose to greatness in the face of chaotic, unpredictable environments. The authors call these companies 10xers because they didn't just beat the competition, they beat them by at least 10 times. Let's pause here and talk about Southwest Airlines, a prime example of a 10x company. If you had invested $10,000 in Southwest back in 1972, you'd be sitting on nearly $12 million by 2002. All of this while the airline industry faced one disaster after another. Fuel shocks, hijackings, labor strikes, and of course, the 9/11 terrorist attacks. But somehow, Southwest kept soaring, while many of their competitors were crashing and burning. So what made Southwest different from other airlines? What was their formula for success? The authors dive into this question and others throughout the book by comparing these 10x companies with a control group of businesses that didn't fare so well, even though they operated in the same industries and faced the same challenges. The main point of this chapter is clear. Thriving in uncertainty is not just about luck or circumstance. It's about mastering the chaos, making decisions, and having strategies that allow you to not only survive, but excel when the world around you is falling apart. The journey of uncovering what sets these companies apart is what lies ahead in the rest of the book. Stick around, because this is just the beginning. We'll discover how these 10xers make their mark in a world full of uncertainty and how you can apply their lessons to your own life or business. Chapter 2, 10xers. Let's dive right into it. This chapter introduces us to the concept of the 10xers, leaders who don't just succeed, they crush their competition by performing 10 times better than the industry average. These leaders are the ones who take on the chaotic, uncertain world and come out on top. The story kicks off with a powerful analogy, 2 expeditions racing to be the first to reach the South Pole in 1911. One team, led by Roald Amundsen, reaches the pole successfully and returns safely. The other, led by Robert Falcon Scott, arrives too late and tragically loses their lives on the way back. Both teams faced the same conditions, the same brutal environment, and yet their outcomes were drastically different. So, what made Amundsen and his team succeed where Scott's team failed? The answer lies in discipline, preparation, and execution, the same qualities that define a 10x leader. Amundsen didn't just rely on luck or hope for the best. He prepared meticulously, trained relentlessly, and built in buffers to account for any unforeseen challenges. For example, when setting up supply depots, Amundsen flagged the area for miles to make sure his team could find it, even in a blizzard. Scott, on the other hand, left only a single flag, a decision that ultimately contributed to his downfall. The lesson here is clear. 10x leaders don't wait for things to go wrong. They prepare for every possibility. They thrive because they expect chaos and build resilience into their systems. They're not reckless risk takers. Instead, they take calculated, well-prepared risks that put them in control, even when things get out of control. Now, what makes these 10x leaders so special? The authors highlight 3 core behaviors. Fanatic discipline. This is the ability to stick to their goals no matter what. 10x leaders set clear targets and march toward them with relentless focus. They don't get overly excited in good times or panic in bad times. They keep moving steadily, like Amundsen did on his South Pole expedition, consistently marching 20 miles a day, whether the weather was good or bad. It's all about maintaining consistency. Empirical creativity. 10xers don't blindly follow conventional wisdom or copy what others are doing. They test things out, gather evidence, and then act based on real-world data. They shoot bullets before cannonballs. That is, they try small, low-risk experiments before going all in. And when they find something that works, they scale it up. Productive paranoia. These leaders are always on the lookout for what could go wrong. They maintain a healthy dose of paranoia that keeps them prepared for the worst. They build buffers and contingencies so that when the inevitable storms come, they're ready. It's not about being fearful, it's about being prepared. Throughout this chapter, the authors draw parallels between the behavior of 10x business leaders and Amundsen's expedition. Both succeeded in the face of extreme uncertainty because they had a clear plan. They didn't let emotion drive their decisions, and they were always prepared for the worst. To wrap it up, 10xers aren't just lucky. They create their own luck by being disciplined, creative, and ready for whatever comes their way. This chapter sets the stage for understanding how these behaviors can be applied to not just surviving, but thriving in chaos. Chapter 3. The 20-Mile March. This chapter introduces a powerful concept called the 20-Mile March. It's all about consistent, disciplined progress, no matter the conditions. The analogy that drives this chapter comes from a story of 2 people who are both walking from San Diego to the tip of Maine, about 3,000 miles. One person marches 20 miles every day, come rain or shine, through deserts, over mountains, and across the plains. The other person pushes hard when the weather is good and rests when the weather is bad. The result? The person who marches 20 miles every single day, no more, no less, wins the race by a huge margin. The lesson? Consistency wins over spurts of effort. This is the essence of the 20-Mile March. Great companies that thrive in chaos have this same mentality. They make steady, measurable progress every year, whether the market is booming or crashing. They don't overextend themselves during the good times, and they don't retreat during the bad times. Instead, they set clear, achievable goals and march toward them relentlessly. A fantastic example of the 20-Mile March in action is John Brown, the CEO of Stryker, a company in the medical technology industry. When Brown took over in 1977, he set a bold, simple target. Stryker would grow its net income by 20% every year, not 30%, not 50%, just 20%. This became the law at Stryker. It wasn't just a goal, it was a rule everyone had to live by. No matter what, they would grow by 20% annually. Now, what makes this incredible is that Stryker maintained this disciplined growth through all kinds of markets, good and bad, stable and volatile. Even when competitors were growing faster, or when Wall Street wanted more aggressive targets, Brown held firm. And guess what? Over the long term, Stryker beat its competitors by a landslide because of this steady, disciplined growth. The 20-Mile March isn't just about setting targets. It's about setting targets that are achievable in both good times and bad. It's about having the self-control to hold back when you could go faster and the stamina to keep pushing when you want to slow down. The chapter also talks about the dangers of overstretching. Some companies, like USSC, grew explosively but were erratic. They had huge upswings, But when the market turned, they crashed hard. Meanwhile, Stryker's steady, disciplined approach helped it weather the storms. Companies that fail to march consistently often burn out when they overreach or collapse when they slow down too much. There's another critical lesson in this chapter. The 20-mile march is not just about growth, it's about self-imposed discipline. It's about choosing a clear, steady path and sticking to it, even when external pressures might push you to deviate. It's about having a lower bound, a minimum level of performance, and an upper bound, a ceiling that prevents you from growing too fast. Both are equally important. To summarize, the 20-mile march is one of the key behaviors that separates 10Xers from the rest. It teaches us that success isn't just about reaching high peaks. It's about consistency, discipline, and measured progress, day in and day out, year after year. This slow, steady march may not be flashy, but it's a proven formula for long-term success. Chapter 4, Fire Bullets, Then Cannonballs. In this chapter, we're introduced to one of the most crucial strategies for thriving in a chaotic world: fire bullets, then cannonballs. This concept teaches us how to make smart, low-risk experiments before going all in on big decisions. It's about testing the waters before you fully commit. Let's start with the analogy. Imagine you're in a naval battle, and you've got only a limited amount of gunpowder. If you use all your gunpowder to fire a cannonball at the enemy ship and you miss, you've just blown your only chance. But if you fire small bullets first, using just a little gunpowder, you can aim better, adjust your course, and find the right target. Once you've locked in on the enemy ship with those bullets, then you fire the cannonball with confidence. You'll be much more likely to hit the target, and you won't have wasted all your resources. Now, apply this idea to business. The bullet is a small, low-risk, low-cost experiment. It's not going to sink you if it fails. The cannonball, on the other hand, is the big move. Once you've figured out exactly what works, you go all in with full force. But first, you test. You fire those bullets to find out what works and what doesn't. Let's take a look at some real-world examples. One of the best ones in this chapter is Southwest Airlines. When Southwest was first getting started, it wasn't sure whether its low-cost, no-frills airline model would work. So instead of launching nationwide or investing heavily right away, they tested the model in Texas first. They fired a bullet, figured out the details, and then, once they were confident the model worked, they fired their cannonball and expanded. Another example comes from the world of biotech. Amgen, one of the world's leading biotechnology companies, wasn't the first to innovate in its field. In fact, companies like Genentech were far more innovative, creating patents and breakthroughs at a much faster rate. But Amgen tested and fired small bullets first, learning what worked in their industry. Once they had a proven product, Epigen, which became a breakthrough drug, they scaled it up massively, firing their cannonball. The result? Amgen's financial success completely outpaced the more innovative Genentech. The key message here is that 10Xers don't rush into big risky moves. They don't gamble everything on one idea. Instead, they fire low-risk bullets to gather data, refine their approach, and make adjustments. Only when they have a proven method do they go all in with the cannonball. This approach helps them succeed in uncertain and unpredictable environments. But here's the catch. Not all bullets lead to cannonballs. Some experiments fail, and that's okay. What separates 10X companies from the rest is their willingness to experiment, learn from their failures, and quickly pivot when something doesn't work. It's all about empirical creativity, using real-world feedback to inform their decisions, rather than relying on guesswork or gut feeling. So what can we take from this? The fire bullets, then cannonballs approach gives us a roadmap for innovation and risk-taking in chaotic environments. Instead of betting everything on one idea, test small, adjust, and then scale. This disciplined approach allows 10Xers to seize opportunities when they arise while protecting themselves from catastrophic failure. In the end, success in a chaotic world doesn't come from wild, reckless bets. It comes from firing well-aimed bullets, learning, and then confidently firing your cannonball once you know you've hit your target. Chapter 5, Leading Above the Death Line. This chapter dives into one of the most critical qualities of successful leaders: productive paranoia. It's all about being hyper-aware of the dangers that could destroy your company or your mission and staying far away from what the authors call the death line. The chapter opens with a gripping story about Mount Everest. In May 1996, David Brashears, a mountaineer and filmmaker, was preparing to film the first-ever IMAX movie from the summit of Everest. As he looked up the mountain, he saw a swarm of climbers heading toward the summit. Many of them were led by experienced guides, but Brashears felt that something wasn't right. Even though the weather seemed fine, he made the decision to turn back and wait for better conditions. A few days later, he returned and successfully reached the summit with his team. But the climbers he had seen that day, they were caught in one of the deadliest storms in Everest history. 8 people died, including the 2 guides who led them. Brashears' decision to turn back wasn't about fear, it was about productive paranoia. He wasn't willing to take unnecessary risks, even when the situation seemed favorable. This mindset saved his life and allowed him to achieve his goal. That's exactly what separates 10x leaders from the rest. They constantly ask themselves, what if things go wrong? How can we prepare for the worst? Now, the death line is the point at which a company or an individual faces existential risk. Crossing the death line means you're putting your entire business or life on the line. If things go wrong, it's game over. The trick to leading successfully in chaos is to never, ever hit the death line. 10Xers do this by maintaining an almost obsessive level of preparation and building reserves to cushion against the unexpected. So, how do they do this? The authors give us 3 core practices of productive paranoia. 1. Build cash reserves and buffers. Just like Brashears carry extra oxygen tanks up Everest, 10x companies build financial reserves to survive tough times. Intel, for example, kept more than $10 billion in cash reserves, about 40% of its annual revenue, just in case things went south. It might have seemed excessive when times were good, but it was crucial when crises hit. Having those reserves meant they could keep moving forward while their competitors were scrambling to survive. Number 2. Bound your risks. Successful leaders make sure they don't take on death line risks, those that could wipe out the company if things go wrong. They manage their risks carefully, never betting the farm on one big move. Stryker, for instance, stayed disciplined about growing steadily, refusing to take on the wild, risky projects that could have put them over the death line. Number 3. Zoom out, then zoom in. 10x leaders know how to step back and look at the big picture when they sense trouble brewing. They constantly scan the horizon for potential threats or changes in the environment, but they also know when to zoom in and focus on the details, making sure they're executing flawlessly in the present. This ability to shift between the big picture and the immediate action is what allows them to stay flexible and adapt quickly when things change. One powerful takeaway from this chapter is the idea that paranoia isn't a bad thing. It's a survival skill. The most successful leaders use their paranoia productively, turning it into a driving force that keeps them prepared for anything. They expect things to go wrong, and they're ready for it. This level of preparation gives them the confidence to take bold actions when necessary, knowing they've got a safety net in place. At the end of the day, leading above the death line is about balancing ambition with caution. You can't afford to be reckless, but you also can't be so risk-averse that you miss out on opportunities. The best leaders find that balance by staying paranoid but productive about the risks they face. Chapter 6. Smack. This chapter is all about the power of a SMAC recipe. Now you're probably wondering, what exactly is SMAC? It stands for specific, methodical, and consistent, a set of durable operating practices that companies use to achieve long-term success. A SMAC recipe gives you a clear, actionable plan to follow, even in chaotic and unpredictable environments. Let's start with a great example from Southwest Airlines. Back in 1979, Howard Putnam, the CEO of Southwest, was facing a big challenge: airline deregulation. This meant a lot of new competition, price wars, and potential bankruptcies. So, what did Putnam do? Did he overhaul Southwest's entire business model to react to this massive change in the industry? No. He stuck to a simple and specific recipe, and it worked. Here's a glimpse of Putnam's SMAC recipe for Southwest Airlines. Remain a short-haul carrier with flights under 2 hours. use only Boeing 737s. This allowed them to streamline operations, maintenance, and training. Turn planes around in 10 minutes to keep flights moving fast. Keep fares low and service frequent, focusing on the passenger experience. No in-flight meals. This cut costs and kept operations simple. Avoid air freight and mail. Focus only on passengers. This recipe was crystal clear and allowed Southwest to stay focused and consistent, even as the airline industry was thrown into chaos. They didn't try to do everything. They stuck to what worked. And over the years, this approach paid off massively. While other airlines struggled, Southwest grew into one of the most successful airlines in history, following this simple, durable recipe. But here's the key lesson. A good smack recipe doesn't remain rigid. While it's durable, it's also flexible enough to evolve when necessary. For example, Southwest eventually embraced internet booking and added longer flights, but it never strayed far from its core principles. The recipe adapted, but the core stayed the same. The same goes for her 10X companies. They all have their own version of a smack recipe, clear, methodical practices that guide their actions. Take Intel, for instance. One of Intel's smack rules was to maintain huge cash reserves to weather industry downturns. Another was to focus on being one fad behind rather than always pushing the bleeding edge of innovation. This allowed them to stay disciplined and financially stable even when the tech industry faced volatility. So, how do you build a smack recipe? It's all about figuring out what works through empirical validation. You need to test different approaches and see what sticks. Once you find a process that delivers results, you lock it in as part of your recipe. But remember, a good recipe also includes things not to do. It sets boundaries and keeps the company from chasing after distractions or taking unnecessary risks. For example, in Stryker's smack recipe, one of their don'ts was to never grow too fast, even when the market was booming. They stayed focused on steady, controlled growth, rather than trying to take over the world in a single leap. This discipline kept them on track while others got caught up in overexpansion and crashes. The chapter highlights how a smack recipe creates stability. It gives the company a solid framework to operate in, especially during turbulent times. It's like a compass that keeps you pointed in the right direction, no matter how crazy the environment around you gets. In summary, a strong smack recipe is one of the key tools that 10X companies use to succeed in unpredictable environments. It allows them to stay focused, make consistent progress, and adapt when needed without losing sight of what makes them successful. It's a practical, repeatable formula for turning strategy into action, and that's what separates 10Xers from the rest. Chapter 7, Return on Luck. In this chapter, we're diving into the concept of luck, but not in the way you might think. We all know that luck plays a role in success, but here's the kicker. It's not about whether you get lucky or unlucky, it's about what you do with that luck. This chapter introduces the idea of return on luck, or O, which means how effectively you capitalize on the luck that comes your way, both good and bad. The chapter starts with an epic story about a climber named Malcolm Daly. While attempting to summit Thunder Mountain in Alaska, Daly took a terrifying fall, hundreds of feet down the icy slope. His legs were shattered, and he was stranded, unable to move. His climbing partner, Jim Donini, had to leave him behind to go get help. The clock was ticking, Daly was losing blood, and a storm was fast approaching. Now here's where luck comes into play. Donini made it to base camp just as a helicopter happened to fly overhead, which allowed them to rescue Daly before the storm hit. If it had been just a few hours later, Daly wouldn't have survived. This story illustrates how luck, both good and bad, can come at any time. Daly had terrible luck when he fell, but incredible luck when the helicopter showed up just in time. The key here is that luck alone didn't save Daly. It was how he and Donini had prepared for adversity that made the difference. So, how does this apply to businesses? Well, here's the reality. Everyone gets lucky at some point, and everyone gets unlucky too. What separates 10X companies from their less successful counterparts isn't how much luck they had, it's how they handled that luck. 10X companies know how to maximize their return on luck. The authors give some powerful examples of this. Take Bill Gates. Yes, he was lucky to have access to a computer at a young age, but that's not what made him a billionaire. Gates capitalized on that opportunity by working tirelessly, taking risks, and building Microsoft into a powerhouse. He didn't just stumble into success, he took full advantage of the lucky breaks he got. On the flip side, the book also highlights companies that got lucky but didn't turn it into long-term success. Genentech, a biotech company, had groundbreaking innovations early on and plenty of luck, but they didn't manage to convert that into enduring success like Amgen did. Amgen, in contrast, fired bullets, tested, and scaled carefully, making the most of their opportunities and minimizing their exposure to bad luck. Here's another critical point. Bad luck isn't the end of the story. Many 10x companies faced severe setbacks, but they survived and thrived because of how they responded to those challenges. They didn't fold under pressure. Instead, they had buffers and preparations in place, and they acted decisively when things went wrong. So what's the big takeaway? Luck, whether good or bad, is not something you can control, but how you respond to it is everything. 10x leaders understand that their job is to maximize their return on luck by being prepared, staying disciplined, and making the most of every opportunity that comes their way, even when it seems like the odds are against them. The chapter concludes with a key insight. Luck is a constant factor for everyone. It's not whether you're lucky or unlucky that matters. It's whether you can turn those moments into something greater. The best companies and leaders don't wait for luck to save them. They actively prepare to take advantage of good luck and survive bad luck. And there you have it. That's the complete summary of Great by Choice. This book has shown us how the world's most successful companies don't just survive chaos, they thrive in it. From the power of disciplined consistency with the 20-mile march, to the importance of firing bullets before cannonballs, and how true leaders stay vigilant with productive paranoia, the lessons from this book are powerful tools we can all use in our own lives and businesses. The key takeaway? Success is not about waiting for luck or perfect conditions. It's about preparing, adapting, and staying disciplined in the face of uncertainty. We control more than we think, and the 10x companies in this book prove that greatness is a matter of choice, not chance. If you found value in this summary and want to continue growing, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join us at Read a Book a Day. We break down the world's best books so you can learn faster and smarter every day. Make sure to subscribe for more summaries, and don't forget to like and share if you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay curious, stay disciplined, and keep reading.